And welcome to Conversations. My name is Jason Plotkin. I am the program director of Congregation Emanu, and every Wednesday at noon, though we have some changes here and there, we talk with a member of our congregation, the community, or perhaps even the sports world to discuss the state of affairs. This week's special guest is our congregant, Judge Bob Schaffer, the presiding judge over the 152nd District Court. Judge Schaffer has presided over the court within the civil trial division since 2008. During our conversation, we'll learn about the court system, how it's had to change its operations during the pandemic, the challenges that exist for those involved in the judicial process, and as citizens, what we can expect as it relates to jury duty. Judge Schaffer, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thanks for inviting me to join you here today.
Well, we're really excited, and obviously having a congregant on, it's double mitzvah, right?
I guess.
All right. So for those who may not know you that are watching today, before we get to discussing your current role in the courts, tell us about your background before becoming a judge.
Well, my background includes being bar mitzvahed at Congregation Emanu in May of 1965. And I've done a few things since then. Before I went on the bench, I was a practicing trial lawyer here in Houston. I practiced law for 24 years, and then in 2008, I ran for election to this position. It is an elected position. Was fortunate enough to have won at that time and have been re-elected two times in 2012 and 2016. And I'm on the ballot again this year with no opponent, so I'm not here campaigning, but this will be election to my fourth term.
Well, and we'll keep it kosher, and we'll not reference any elections here. But, now that we know about your background, what are your current duties right now with the courts?
Wow, that's interesting. On top of being judge of the 152nd District Court, I'm also the local administrative judge, which is a position that was created by statute. Each county selects by election of the judges in that county, an administrative judge who handles administrative matters. And I've been the local administrative judge in Harris County since October of 2013. That is really, it's an interesting job because there's no real clear definition. But I handle budgetary matters for the district courts. I represent the judges when someone asks for comments from the judiciary that don't involve comments on specific cases. Since Harvey hit, I have been actively involved in helping get the county back online after Harvey. The Criminal Justice Center was flooded and it was out of commission for a while. The Jury Assembly building was flooded and it's now being repaired. And we had other issues in other buildings, coordinating judges, sharing courtrooms and things of that sort. Since COVID-19 hit, we have more issues related to catastrophes involving when we could get trials back going, and specifically when we could get jury trials back on track, because conducting jury trials is really important in all phases of the court and all divisions, but specifically in the criminal court division where people are in jail waiting to have their cases resolved. And if there's no access to a jury trial, it makes that a whole lot more difficult.
So you talked about your administrative role. Let's go back to the second week of March. You were part of a group of leaders that decided to suspend court happenings at the time. And obviously in the Houston area, this week we're staring down a tropical disturbance. So we're very familiar with those kind of stoppages. So what was different about this decision-making process and some of the ramifications that are a little different than when we have to stop due to tropical disturbances?
Well, after Harvey hit the community, we had to obviously stop courthouse activities because the Criminal Justice Center was flooded, the Jury Assembly was flooded, and we had to make accommodations so that people could have a courtroom to work in. March of 2020 was a whole different kind of situation, a different disaster, because now we had to stop people from coming downtown to the courthouse campus because we had to make sure that people were safe. We had orders from the governor, we had orders from the county judge, and those orders were designed to keep people away from large public gatherings. And while you may not think a courthouse is a location for large public gatherings, it really is, because you have people in elevators having to go from floor to floor. You have people standing outside the courtrooms, crowded outside the courtrooms, and you had people crowding into the courtrooms, especially in the criminal courthouse. So that was a situation where we had to keep people from coming in. So the Board of Judges voted to suspend jury trials for a period of time. And then the state Supreme Court also issued an order suspending jury trials, which that order has been renewed several times, and it is still in existence today. In general, there's a suspension of jury trials. The Supreme Court also ordered us to conduct our proceedings remotely to the greatest extent possible. So we weren't inviting people into the courthouse to have hearings. We were having hearings exactly how we're doing this today, on Zoom. And just parenthetically, I wished I'd invested in Zoom 6 months ago. But that said, that's how most of us have been conducting our business, although in-person hearings are cranking back up again. And as a matter of fact, our first jury trial in a long time is being conducted today, right now. The jury selection process is going on, not in the courthouse complex, but NRG Arena is hosting that, because we can spread out and have wide open spaces in the NRG Arena to conduct that jury selection process in.
What's fascinating, and I like to make sure we acknowledge this, we're recording this on Monday, the 24th. It will air on the 26th. So if you've seen, maybe by the time this airs, you'll have seen articles about this. And of course, for those of us who are used to using Zoom, there was an outage this morning. So, we depend on Zoom, but you never know what's going to happen. Technology certainly happens, and luckily we're able to do this.
Well, and Zoom doesn't always work perfectly.
Right.
I had multiple Zoom conferences this morning where one or two of them didn't go right.
Right, and I had the same issue, and apparently quite a few school districts did. So Zoom is great to an extent, but again, we can't necessarily 100% rely on technology. But earlier you mentioned that there's people waiting in the jails waiting for a jury trial. I think for those of us who may not be as familiar with the courts, we don't think about the people who might be in a pinch because of delays and court cases being heard. So who are the individuals in particular who might be feeling that pinch right now with jury cases specifically, but in general with the status of the courts? Who's feeling those pinches right now?
Well, the criminal justice system probably more than any of the other divisions. We're divided into criminal division, civil division, family division, and juvenile division. Those are the district courts. And then we have county courts that are divided up into criminal and civil and probate courts. In general, the criminal justice system is probably hit the hardest because you have people who are sitting in jail who can't get out on bail for whatever reason, and they can't get their case resolved without there being a trial setting. What a lot of people don't realize is that without a threat of a trial, an actual trial setting, it's harder to get things resolved because the motivation sometimes is not there to get it resolved. And that's true in criminal cases and in civil cases as well. So you've got people, we've got over 8,400 people sitting in our county jail right now, and many of them are there waiting for their cases to be resolved. If we can't have jury trials, it makes it more difficult to get those cases resolved. Some of them are getting resolved. There's plea bargains and plea hearings going on as we speak across the street in the Criminal Justice Center. But there's still a lot of people in the jails, and it's not just the jails really. People who are out on bond have the same considerations also. They want to get their case resolved as well. So it's harder to do that if we don't have a good, firm trial setting. And that's what we're trying to get back in, cranked cranked back up so that we can move these cases along. Because when this ends, all the courts are going to have backlogs. Criminal, civil, probate, juvenile, family are going to have tremendous backlogs that will take a long time, because we're just now recovering from Harvey 3 years later. The court system is recovering from Harvey, and now they're recovering from COVID-19. And so you put one disaster on top of another, and it just spreads out the docket backlog that will take years to overcome.
So you talked about cranking things up, and obviously I like to use sports analogies. The playbook that you probably have used for Harvey, well, that was a unique circumstance, but the playbooks can all go out the window. So what are some of the key things that you guys have had to put into place in the courthouse to start getting things moving, cranked up, as you said?
Well, when COVID-19 hit, we were still in the process of repairing the criminal courthouse. And so the judges were sharing courts. I had 2 criminal court judges who were using my suite mate's court, while my suite mate and I shared my court. And so that was going on still, because there was a long delay in getting the Criminal Justice Center repaired. In June of this year, the court floors in this Criminal Justice Center were finally repaired, and those judges who'd been sharing our courts all moved back into their own courtrooms in the Criminal Justice Center. That meant they had access to their own courtrooms every day so they could conduct hearings to get cases resolved. And that left us with our courtrooms back to conduct hearings and to conduct trials to get our cases resolved. Well, but the problem with that was the Supreme Court had issued an order saying no jury trials until just recently. So we couldn't do jury trials. The criminal courts couldn't do jury trials. None of the courts could do jury trials. That's starting back up. We could do bench trials, non-jury trials, but we couldn't have a lot of people coming in the courtrooms, because now we have the COVID-19 social distancing restrictions, which meant you couldn't have more than 25 people in my courtroom and 21 people in the courtrooms over in the Civil Justice Center, because we were limited to 25% of regular normal capacity. Jason, I'm not sure if I actually answered your question or not, so let me stop and see if I did.
Well, I guess it kind of parlays into the next question. You kind of alluded to it. What are the significant changes that you're having to put into place, or perhaps concessions that are having to be made to get this thing moving? What are things that you've had to do? I mean, you talked about limiting the amount of people in a space, and obviously you mentioned NRG Arena earlier, but what are some of the most significant changes and/or, I hate to use the word concessions, but things you've had to give into to make this a reality?
Okay, I'm going to talk about NRG Arena then for now. People are wondering, why would the courthouse have to move their operations over to the NRG Arena? And the NRG Arena is that old arena. It used to be Astro Arena when the Astrodome complex was first built. It's an older facility. It's in the southeastern corner of the property over there at the corner of Fannin and the South Loop. With our jury assembly building out of commission, we needed a place to assemble people to conduct our jury assembly and voir dire. The NRG Arena, with their big arena, we use for people to come in for their general call, and then we divide them out into separate spaces to go for what we call voir dire, or the jury selection process. There's a smaller pavilion over at NRG Arena that's perfectly situated for that purpose, but then we had to go into one of the big spacious halls and build out 3 courtrooms to conduct the jury selection process. So we're able to pick juries for 4 cases a day. Now, it won't be 4 cases every day, because all the courts are not ready to try cases, and the Supreme Court has said only those actually approved by the Supreme Court Office of Court Administration can go forward right now. So that's why I'm saying today, and we're filming this, videoing this on Monday, is the first day we've had jury selection process. So the jury is being picked over at NRG Arena, and then tomorrow they will come back over here to the civil courthouse, and the trial will be conducted in the courtroom of the judge who's picking the jury. Well, we've got to accommodate the COVID-19 restrictions, which means everyone has to wear a face covering. There is plexiglass all over the courtroom. I've been joking lately that our courtrooms are starting to look like a hockey rink. The witnesses who sit in the witness stand have plexiglass on 2 or 3 sides of them. It looks like a penalty box. And the jury no longer sits in the jury box, but they sit in the gallery where they can spread out and social distance. The lawyers have to spread out as well. And we've got to move the furniture around in the courtroom so that the jurors aren't looking at the back of the lawyers' heads or the parties' heads. And so the limitations that we're having to deal with in regard to trying the lawsuit are really difficult because you're not doing it the regular, normal way. Now, that said, there are some courts in the state that are trying to do jury trials on Zoom. One has been done up in Northeast Texas, but it wasn't a full-blown jury trial, but they did it. And in the near future, there may be a couple of more that are trying to try these cases on Zoom. There are a lot of problems that arise with that we're trying to deal with. But for the most part, we're going to, as we get back with jury trials, we're going to try to do them the way I've described by bringing people back into the courthouse and observing the social distancing, the face shields, the face masks, and so forth.
So you referenced it's sort of getting back to business as usual, though albeit with some changes, for juries who are starting at NRG Arena then having to go downtown. But what are some of the things holding off some of the other courts from coming back into business? What are some of the challenges beyond having the difficulties in getting a jury? What are some of the other challenges that you're facing as a courthouse?
Well, the first challenge is the number of people you can put in a courtroom. The second challenge is the number of people you can put outside in the hallway. Another challenge is the number of people you can put in the elevators. The elevators is a big challenge, especially in the Criminal Justice Center, because the elevators were a huge problem over there because they weren't built and they weren't designed to handle the number of people that go through the criminal justice courthouse on a regular basis. And now you can only put 4 people in the elevator, and you have hundreds, if not thousands, who need to be transported vertically up and down to courtrooms and other offices in the building. So those are just a few of the challenges that we have to deal with. A lot of what we're doing is for hearings and other matters on Zoom. Well, Zoom has to be working, and every now and then you get a glitch involved in that. I've had some Zoom hearings where I've had 80 to 85 people on the call. They're not all talking, only about a half a dozen or so are talking, but you've got to be able to accommodate that. Now, on top of that, those people who are trying cases where electronics, video conferencing is used, we also have to make our proceedings available to the public, because the state constitution says we have to leave our courts open for the public to see and participate whenever they want to. You don't need my permission to come sit in on a trial in my court or any of the courts, unless there's special circumstances. But with this COVID-19 situation, you can't just wander down to the courthouse, because there's a concern that you may walk into a room and you make the room overpopulated under the circumstances. So there's some live streaming going on. One of my colleagues live streamed a short non-jury bench trial. It was a one-day trial. He live streamed it over, I believe, YouTube, and I was told over 3,000 people observed that trial, and some as far away from Germany. So those are some of the considerations and some of the issues that we have to deal with.
I might need to talk to that colleague about High Holy Days if they've had 3,000 people watching, find out what some of the technical issues were or some of the advice they have.
You will have those
that,
considerations. Yes, you're right.
yeah, good problems to have. So, you talked about earlier rearranging the furniture, having trying to avoid the lawyers or prosecutors' heads to the jury. I mean, for those who are prosecutors or defense attorneys, what are their biggest challenges? I mean, I would presume that, they're not able to confer as easily since they're socially distanced. I mean, what are they going to be the biggest challenges in this new reality, particularly for the prosecutors and the defense attorneys?
Well, we have found that the district court judges conducted a survey a couple of months ago, where we sent questions to as many local bar associations, specialty bar associations, and we got 3,100 responses. And one of the things we discovered is 3/4 of the people don't want to come down to the courthouse. They don't want to be down here for obvious reasons. Because of the COVID-19 situation, they don't want to be in a place where there's large gatherings. Some people are in the population that's more at risk than others. So they don't want to come down to the courthouse. And so that's something that we're having to contend with. And there are other things that regular people like y'all probably don't have much care about, but that's the main thing is who comes down to the courthouse, whether they're masked, face shields, social distancing, and things of that sort.
So you earlier brought up juries, and probably for those watching, the thing that resonates with them the most in the courthouse and what they probably are more inclined to quote unquote participate in is being a juror. So what can we expect going forward? Are they picking smaller groups of people because of how few courts are managed every day, or how long are we going to see this, two-step process of going to NRG Arena and then to the courthouse? What's the future of being selected for a juror look like here in Houston?
The jury assembly building, which is across the street from where I am downtown, is under construction right now. It's below ground, and I know a lot of people are going, what the heck is it doing below ground in Houston, Harris County, Texas? But it is. And there are 4 rooms which can handle about 250 each. Those rooms we will probably bring jury selection, the jury assembly process back into that building, but it will be on a limited numbers basis so that what we put in each room is limited to social distancing considerations. That will be sometime in February of next year. Until then, we'll be using the NRG Arena for that purpose because it does serve a good purpose. It's in an easy location to get to. It may be far for some people. It has free parking right next to the building, which I know everybody appreciates. But we will, in 2021, we will have the ability, I think, to conduct more jury trials because we'll have access to that building on a regular basis, and we won't have to share it as we are to a small degree with other folks who are using NRG Arena. The Supreme Court has said, don't conduct large numbers of jury trials until we do a few of these like we're doing now so that everybody can see how it's going to work, whether each court is going to observe the social distancing requirements, whether they're going to work to keep people safe. For instance, where are you going to break? Where are you going to take your breaks? What room are you going to be in? In the jury room for each court, there's a big table with 12 chairs around it. 12 people can't go in those rooms and observe social distancing. So as an example of what we're doing is I'm paired up with my suite mate down the hall. And if I'm in a jury trial, I'll use that courtroom for my jury room and vice versa when that judge is in a jury trial. We've got to make accommodations to make sure that we are concerned about the COVID-19 issues. Were they going to eat lunch? Were they going to get lunch? Are we going to bring in pizzas like we did before? No, we're not bringing in pizzas like we did before. So those are some of the considerations that we're trying to work out.
So 2 final questions today. So during the pandemic, and I like to ask this to a lot of people because I think we can all relate, what is going to stick going forward? Are there tricks that you have learned in your time as a judge during this pandemic time that you're going to use going forward that you may not have previously? What are things that are resonating with you that are going to be a long-term thing?
The most important thing is what we're doing right now. Who'd heard of Zoom beforehand? Now, with that said, some of my colleagues had already started doing video conferencing. We have cases, not a lot of cases, but we have enough cases that lawyers from Dallas, Austin, Fort Worth, Corpus Christi have cases here in the Harris County Courthouse. And that's fine. They are welcome. And I had a policy that they could appear by telephone whenever they needed to, except for in a hearing where we had to take evidence. Well, I think you're going to see, I know in my court you will, more and more use of this Zoom conferencing idea, because it's not necessary for that Dallas lawyer to schlep all the way down here for a hearing that will take 15 or 20 minutes. If he can stay in his office, if she can stay in her office, you're saving your client hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in attorney's fees. So this video conferencing thing is going to really, I think, be the biggest change in how we do business down at the courthouse.
All right, and then my final question, I always like to end with a positive story or takeaway. Is there something that you've personally learned during the pandemic that's going to impact how you preside over the court going forward, or perhaps a feel-good story of you or a colleague from around the courthouse during the pandemic?
A feel-good thing about, well, I don't know, Jason. I try to create a positive environment in my courtroom so that there's not a lot of gnawing and gnashing of teeth and a lot of yelling and screaming at people, and you're required to act professional. And for the most part, and I mean for the most part, people do act professional. And every now and then you get the guy who doesn't want to do a Zoom deposition or doesn't want to accommodate somebody because they're ill. And believe it or not, you do get those people. But I have found that for the most part, everybody is really trying hard, or most everybody is really trying hard to accommodate the situation that we're in right now and make things work positively so that we can accomplish more and get these cases resolved without having a bunch of gnawing and gnashing of teeth and yelling and screaming at one another and all the conflict which litigation just naturally is encumbered with. So I think I feel good about the bar. I feel good about people wanting to try to get things done on a positive note, and hopefully this COVID fatigue won't wear that down.
Well, I just want to thank you again for coming on today on our conversations. I really appreciated learning more about the courts, learning more about how they're adjusting during the pandemic, and I'm sure others will too. So thank you again for coming on.
Jason, has been an absolute pleasure. I'm more than happy to do this again whenever you'd like. You have a great day.
I appreciate that. So to those watching, thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in today. Special thanks to David Tanner, as always. And a reminder that our next conversation will take place on Wednesday, September 2nd, and that will be with Randy Zarlinski of AJC Houston. Please note that the time will probably be in the evening due to a programmatic conflict, so be on the lookout in Emanu Communications. But again, this will be streamed on Facebook and our Polar Chapel video streaming. Thanks again to everyone for joining, and we will see you again next time.